Hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. That timer was a little off. I apologize. Hi, welcome. Happy New Year. It is January 1st, 2022. The new year has begun, and here we are coming to you live, first live stream of the year. So excited to be here and so many things to talk about. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the Federation and its encountering of the Tholians, the Hydrans with their own Tholian story, the Klingon State of the Empire address, and we're also going to be looking at the Gorn as well. And of course, big news, our goal of 100 subscribers has been reached. Thank you so much to everybody in the community for getting on board. At the time of this broadcast, we are at 101 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you so much. Why is that important? It allows us to unlock a feature in YouTube, which allows us to get a unique URL for the channel. And there are many more that come along, many more sort of features that come along as we grow in size. But that is the sort of the milestone of 100 subscribers. But if you're brand new to Star Trek New Worlds and you're thinking, Tony, what are you talking about? Star Trek New Worlds is a turn-based strategy game that we play online with you using the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. And we use Vassal, an online platform that you will see in a moment, to be able to populate the maps. And we, of course, share this with you online on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, of course. So, yeah, we're Star Trek fans playing this strategy game and sharing that experience with you as we walk this war game forward, build out the story and the narrative, and share with you the stories of the story as it progresses. So let's talk about the subscriber count real quick. Thank you so much for everybody who subscribed in the recent in the month of December. The month of December was really big for us as far as growth on this channel. So thank you so much to everybody who is a new subscriber to the channel now. This is a huge milestone, and it allows us to be able to unlock a couple things. One, we get to get that specific URL that is specific to our channel. But this raises a big question. If you've been following us for any length of time throughout the year, you know that we started off as Star Trek Lost Stars, and now we are Star Trek New Worlds. Now, those two names are representative of the campaigns that we have started and are playing. The first campaign was Lost Stars that we shared with you, and now the current campaign is Star Trek New Worlds. Now, the question that I'm sort of putting to you as our new community of subscribers is, what should be the name of this channel? Now, the campaign that we're playing, of course, is Star Trek New Worlds. That's sort of the iconography and everything that you see on the channel. But the question is, should that be the name of the channel? Should we have a more generic name and just speak to the different campaigns that we play? As an example, for any of you who are aware or know of Critical Role is a channel on YouTube and other platforms that play D&D or AD&D online. They share their campaigns and stream them much like we do, but their channel name is Critical Role, and they have different campaigns. Those campaigns have different names, and they're not necessarily the name of the channel, but they all fall under that umbrella. So the question for you all is, A, should we name this channel Star Trek New Worlds and then just go forward from there? Or should we come up with a more sort of umbrella name or umbrella term for the channel that sort of encompasses all the things that we do? Now, of course, we're playing Federation and Empire online here with you, but in the future, of course, we could grow and do other things as things go on. But what do you think? Do you think that Star Trek New World should be the name of the channel? Should that just be the name of our campaign and the channel be called something else? What are your thoughts? Please put them down below in the comments. I'd love to be able to hear your ideas, your thoughts, and as you are part of our community now, your input is really valuable to us. You are one of a very small group of special people who've chosen to support this channel, and we value your input. So please, in the comments below, let us know what your ideas for the channel name, your thoughts of whether it should be New Worlds or otherwise, and all. So please put your input below. We'd love to hear it. Additionally, let's talk about milestones. So 100 subscribers by the end of the year was our goal, and the milestone to be able to reach what we've done now. So that was huge, and thank you so much for the support. Now the next milestone unlocks another feature in YouTube, and that is the 500 subscriber mark. Once we hit 500 subscribers, we unlock a new feature in YouTube called the community support or community page. So what that means is that we can make posts on YouTube that aren't necessarily just videos. We can put out, and you've probably seen this on other channels, they put out little text posts or images or polls or different kinds of content that engage you. They're not necessarily a video, as of course YouTube is video centric, but they're just little additional things that you can put out. For example, Kyle Hill is a science educator of sorts on YouTube, and his particular channel has a myriad of different content. He has live streams, he has pre-uploaded videos or uploaded videos that you can watch on demand, and then he has these community posts that he puts up, which typically are just kind of funny photos and comments about things that are going on either in science or culture, pop culture, or in the world at large. And so that is a feature that we're going to be able to unlock at the 500 subscriber mark. Now, of course, from 0 to 100 has been a huge milestone, so thank you so much for that. 100 to 500 is even more so. So we'll just take that one step at a time. But to give you a scope of kind of what the next sort of hurdle or flag that we're heading towards is, that'll be the 500 subscriber mark to be able to unlock those community post features and again, be able to sort of engage more with you as our community and so on. And lastly, I wanted to talk about Patreon. Now, you may have seen in some of the posts on this channel and various others that we have a Patreon page. Now, the Patreon started off with Lost Stars, and it is currently labeled as Star Trek Lost Stars. But it was put up, and there hasn't been a lot of attention put on it since it initially went up. The question to you, our community of now 101 subscribers, what do you want to do with that? What would you like to do with Patreon? First of all, do you think Patreon's a good platform to be able to support this channel, to be able to grow? Is that something that you'd be interested in at all? If so, what do you think we should put on there? What should we offer or include as a Patreon series of benefits, so to speak? Because as you support the channel, generally speaking in Patreon, you offer sort of different content or different benefits for different levels of support on Patreon. Early videos, for example, or special live streams, or specific other kinds of content. If that is something that you would be interested in, what kinds of things would you be interested in? Would you want to see videos early? Would you want to see specific kinds of images or artwork or something else? For example, we have in our community, we have these awesome CGI renders or virtual renders of these spaceships that are going on, and there are more coming out all the time. And so we can publish those on Patreon and share those with you. Would that be of value to you? Maybe. Either way, let us know in the comments below what you would like when it comes to Patreon. So put Patreon in the subject title or in the comment title first, and then your comments, notes, what you think would be interesting or what you would like on Patreon going forward. Is that something? Is that a platform that you would like to use? If not, is there another one that you think is better? And what kind of content on Patreon do you think would you be wanting from us to be able to make this community, this experience more fun for you, more enjoyable, and overall just a good time? Now, with all that being said, let's get to the meat and potatoes of why we're here. So in today's episode, we are talking about, and we'll do this first, we'll do the map reveal for a couple of the different factions. We're going to start off with the Federation. So let's head over to the map, and here we are. So here we can see, now, of course, as always, all these maps are displaced, and as we're seeing here, the map is on Vassal. So this is really, really interesting. Now, we know from turn 32. So this is turn 34 that we're looking at right now. We know from a previous live stream before Christmas, we know that the Federation encountered the Tholians earlier. But if we look at this map, we can't see any red ships on the map, right? But what can we see? We can see 2 slow size class 4 ships in these grayed out hexes that are very close to various ships. So this is interesting to note. So first of all, let's take away the ships real quick and show you the bases. Oh! Okay. I didn't see that. This is the first time I'm seeing this as well. So we take away the ships, and what do we see? A Tholian base. Boom! So we know that the Federation has, like, in all earnest, bumped into the Tholians substantially. I mean, they have a base right there, so that's going to be the edge of their sort of territory, at least. And as we can see here, it's the ships that are there. There is a YCA, so probably one of the best ships that the Federation can put out right now, being that they're in Y-Tech. So a Y-era cruiser with a prime team, and they encountered that base. So what's really important about this right now? Well, let's take away the ships for a second. So one of the features of the game right now is the sharing of maps, and the intelligence you get from that's really important. In this map, we can see that there is a distance of 5 hexes between, 5 hexes between these 2 bases. The closest bases, that is. And in order for 2 empires to share information on their maps, or the maps to open up, so to speak, both parties have to be within supply distance of each other. Now, we know that the Federation is at supply 3 at the very least. So let's set the supply to 3. So there would have to be a supply point within this radius, within the blue hexes. So for example, let's say Zulu 39 here. If there was a base, a Tholian base right there, and they were within 3 hexes of each other, the Federation and the Tholian base, then at that point, the maps would open up. Why? Because in the world of the game that we're playing, there is a commercial or merchant kind of economy, and you would have these trade ships going back and forth. And as trade ships go back and forth, merchants would share news and comments and share maps. And the idea is that the information would be disseminated amongst the population, and eventually there would be news and word of this massive, or this other people that exist on this other far side of the galaxy, and it would open up. So once supply touches both bases or both supply points, the map will open up. And so what we can see here is, let's show the supply for the Tholians. And you can see that there is an overlap of these, basically this strip of hexes here. So based on what's already been explored, if you had a Tholian or Federation base that was in either one of these hexes, or I suppose any of these over here, then the maps would open up. So if you open up the maps, that's great. You can see back and forth. It's no big deal. But if you don't, there is a distinct advantage to doing that, because you keep the other player in the dark as to what's going on. Now, of course, we're sharing these maps, so to speak, on this live stream. So if the Tholian player is watching, then they can see what's going on. But from the perspective of knowing exactly where all the ships are and knowing what you're doing, that is a distinct strategic advantage. Let's bring the ships back real quick. And we can see that, so we've got 2 size class 4 ships, 1 each here. Those most likely are YFESs, or Y-era freighters that are exploration freighters. So YFES. small exploration freighters. So Y-era freighter, exploration small. So YFES. That is what is most likely in those two hexes. And as we can see here, we've got the Federation, who's identified that they've identified this base. They have a YFEL here, so they're trying to explore. And it looks as though they're going to try and build a base here in Alpha Alpha 39. If that's the case, and let me move my head because I noticed that the watermark is covering me there. If this is the case, then they're going to open up the maps. Now, that could be really good in the sense that it'll allow sort of really clear discussion between the two of them as to where the border should be or shouldn't be, and open transparency and communication. But if, as we've seen in sort of some other players, if they're trying to be cagey or they're trying to be a little more mischievous when it comes to the border relations, then that may not be the best course of action. But either way, this convoy, as of right now, based on what we can see, is definitely extending supply to this YCA. It's extending supply because it's within the supply range of this base, and this YCA definitely is not. And therefore, so right now that Y convoy is providing a specific tug mission that extends the supply another 3 hexes. So 1, 2, 3, and you can see that there. So what's interesting though, and I don't know if the Federation explored these hexes in advance, perhaps when he discovered the base, there was a role play encounter between the ship captain and the base commander that opened up that little pocket. For example, the Tholians shared their map for that little pocket to show this is our base. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but it's very interesting to see that there's this little very symmetrical pocket that's open here. This may indicate that there's going to be a beginning of some kind of discussion or dialogue between them, and they're going to set up a border and kumbaya all the way around. We'll see. We'll see. It's very, very interesting. But like I say, Tholian base right there on the map. That's pretty impressive. Now, let's just take a quick look at the rest of the sort of information. So let's do around the clock. We'll start with EP. So as we can see here, we can see that the Federation has an income of 22 economic points. So they're at 22, which is really good. If we remove their bases, we can see that they've discovered a new resource here, and looks like in the north as well. So they're slowly continuing to grow. What's interesting to note as well is that the reach or the distance from their homeworld. So this is their homeworld system here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're at approximately a 5 hex. 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 hex distance from their homeworld, and they're starting to bump into people. Very interesting and important to note. Let's take a quick look at, let's bring the ships back, ships and bases back. Let's take a look at their fleet cap. Fleet cap. There it is. All right. So we can see here that the Federation fleet cap is pretty significant. They have 13 ship equivalents and a total fleet cap of 72. So 39 attacks, 72 defense, pretty significant. If we open this up, we can see that they've got, in their home fleet, they've got 3 ship equivalents there. So staying close to home. But we can see, as we look at the map, we can see the spread of, he's got this armada of W-era cruisers, which is significant. And then we can see that there is a fairly, he's pumping out these Y-era cruisers as well, which is really important because, first of all, Y-era cruisers move 4 versus the W-era cruisers, which move 3. So greater distance. Obviously, you can see here that the Y-era cruisers have an attack of 4 and a defense of 6 versus the 3-5 of the W-era cruisers. So, better firepower. And of course, as a cruiser with a prime team embarked, they have the same ability or the same chance to discover fogged out hexes as a small exploration freighter. So very interesting to see that as it's going. We've got, man, look at this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and arguably 10. 10 different ships, cruisers with prime teams embarked, which he's using to be able to explore above and beyond his large exploration freighters, which he's using. Very interesting to note, I don't see a survey cruiser, and I want to say, and I don't know this, I don't remember from the Federation ship list if they have an early era exploration cruiser. I think that they do, but they obviously they haven't built one. Now, it's interesting to note that because obviously, so exploration cruisers or exploration ships are more expensive to build based on the unique use case for them. And so in this case, the Federation player has chosen to go with the cheaper cruiser option, which is really good. As you can see here, he's built a cruiser with a prime team, which gives him really good chances of exploration. And of course, he's built an armada or a fleet to be able to defend himself should he need it. Based on the fact that there's 2 YFELs, there's room for an exploration freighter, and he's at Y-era technology. It would be my recommendation that he build a Y-era survey cruiser if he can. If he can't, then fair enough. I mean, it is what it is, but that's what I would recommend. Also interesting to note that he's got the wormhole here, and it would seem, as I zoom out, that he has not sent a ship through the wormhole, because as we scroll up here, we can see that there's no other ship anywhere else. So interesting. No exploration of the wormhole, which is fine, but very much an encounter with the Tholians down here. Very, very exciting. All right, let's switch over to the map with the Hydrans, the ISC, and as we can see here in the top corner, the Remans. So this again is turn 34. And we can see that as before, we've got the spread of the ISC, the Hydrans down below in green, and this color right here is the Remans. Now the Remans, if you're not familiar, they were featured in the last Star Trek Next Generation movie, and they are sort of a subset of the Romulan Empire. In this game, we play them as the Klingon variant ships. So, for example, in the Starfleet universe, there was a period of time when the Romulan ships were basically Klingon hulls, but retrofitted with Romulan technology, plasma torpedoes, cloaking technology, and various other things. And there's a narrative in the Starfleet universe about this ship and technology exchange that occurred between the Romulans and the Klingon Empire. As a result, there's a bunch of Romulan ships in the ship list that are Klingon. So what we've done here is we've separated them as a separate faction within the game. We have Romulans and then sort of Reman or Klingon or KR ships within the within the Romulan sphere. So they have a lot of the same perks in the sense of cloaking technology and that sort of tech tree. But their ships, when we see them, will look very Klingon because they have the Klingon profile. And you'll notice that there's a very similar sort of attack and defense factor split on them when we see them. But interesting to note here, the border is, as we zoom in, the border is still in effect. And they've got one large exploration freighter that's wandered into the neutral zone. As we take away the ships here, looking at the ISC and the Reman interaction, we can see that there is a concerted effort to build the bases along the border with the Hydrans. Not as much base building going on right now with the Remans, but very obviously with the tug here and a Y convoy here, there is going to be an intent to build out bases along this border as well. Interesting to note as we just take away the ships and the bases, we can see here that this this colony rather, is very unhappy, so hostile. And I cannot remember. We'd have to go back and take a look at the previous live stream to see whether this was a minor faction that the ISC conquered, or whether just bad things have happened and and the happiness scale has gone down. My bet is that it was a minor faction and that he conquered it, and that because he conquered it, it's gone unhappy. Yeah, that's most likely what's happening. And then of course we've got the gravity well here, which is the one-way wormhole, and we'll see if there's anything on the out end of that in a moment. Now, before I go down to the Hydrans, I'm just going to quickly go over to the chat. Let me take a quick look at the chat. So, woo! All right. Paul is giving us thumbs up, saying hello. Mark Casa, hey Mark, welcome to the stream. Jim saying warming up the fusion beams, of course. Chuck saying, I am noticing the lack of Lyran representation in these videos. I think a squadron should be dispatched to correct this insult. Hey, well, yes, I think you should send a squadron of Lyran ships to sort that out. I would be happy to welcome them with open arms. But that speaks to sort of the new animations and visualizations that we have coming in the new year. Paul, who creates those here on this channel, is creating more to represent all the different factions in the game. Lyrans included, Romulans, the Remans, and so on. So we'll be sharing some of those pictures and those animations as we go forward. I have to break those or bring those animations in to create like a video, and we'll do that as we go forward throughout January, February, the beginning part of this year. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't, of course, already subscribed, please consider subscribing just to be able to follow along with those new animations as they come out. Del Webb. Del, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Paul, I will sort an animation just for you there, Chuck. There you go. Riemann Galaxy Domination, of course. There's one spammy piece of content here. I'll just get rid of it real quick. That's all gone. And then William Phillips, welcome to the stream. Okay, let's go back into what we're talking about here with the ISC and the Hydrans. So going back to the Hydrans, let's take a look. Okay. Let's take away the ships for a second. We can see that the resources, it looks like he's explored a couple. We'll take a look at EP and fleet count or fleet cap in a second. But it looks like the Hydrans have explored and discovered a couple more resources here. We can bring back the bases. We can see that the base pattern continues in the 3 hex model. So you can see that as he's been exploring, he's been building out these bases at 3 hex intervals. Very much taking advantage of the space that's sort of already been explored, this sort of organic exploration pattern, leveraging the space that's been explored and kind of moving out in that direction. Bring back the ships real quick. We can see that at the gravity well, so in this particular map, in Charlie 34, we can see that there was a ship that came through. It was a Romulan ship. This was the WSN that we can see here, and it is currently located on a base in an adjacent hex. So, will the ship be repaired? Perhaps, maybe. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see the interaction between the Romulans and the Hydrans at this early stage in the game. Don't know where the Romulans are on the map. We haven't even seen the Romulan faction as of yet, but their interaction with the Hydrans will be very sort of interesting to see as it unfolds. Very telling. We can also see that the Hydrans are moving towards this Tholian planet over here in Juliet 33. Let's take a quick look and see what's in that fleet. Hydran, Argonne, Noble Fleets. So in the Argonne Fleet, we can see we have an small exploration freighter, and a Vol, which is a Y-era frigate. So both in the Helium and, Neon and Argonne fleets, we have that. And in Xenon Fleet, we have just the small exploration freighter. So These two here have exploration freighters in them, with one with an escort, and then Argonne continues to have that. Now, interesting. Old Colony Squadron. Let's take a look at Old Colony Squadron and see what's there. So still the Three Musketeers. So that's the W-era frigate that he has built. So W-era frigates, they're sort of acting as a roadblock to any Tholian incursion, shall we say, if the Tholians decide to reach out and touch him. Let's take a look at the Tholian fleet. I imagine it hasn't changed much. It's got now 3 YPCs, so Y-era patrol craft, relatively weak, with a 1.5. That's the one with that little diamond on it. So 1.5 attack and a 3 defense. So very interesting. We can see here that as we kind of go to the bottom of the map, we've got YFEL and a WSR. So the WSR is trying to explore this sort of errant fogged hex, as we can see that there. We have the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which are the tugs that the Hydrans have built, are continuing to sort of build out their bases at this 3 hex interval. You can see this one in Hotel 40 is most likely going to build a base there. Again, building out at this 3 hex interval. It would seem as though one of the tugs, Death in this case, is positioned over the wormhole, perhaps going to, or the gravity well, perhaps going to build a base there to sort of block any potential visitors that may come through there in the future. We can also see that the Orions are doing some exploration, potentially on contract for the Hydrans. That's interesting. And the reason why we know that is because this ship, a YCL with a WCL with a W-era escort frigate, has explored a hex, but the resource is not being... So the resource doesn't belong to the Orions, otherwise it would be blue with white dots. It's neutral, which is the white color. As we remove the ship there, the white color with the blue dots is neutral. So he's discovered it, and so now the Hydrans will have to send a ship over there to claim it. So it would seem as though he's got the Orions, which are these blue bases and ships factions. He's got them under contract, so to speak, doing some exploration for him. So very, very interesting. Let's take a quick look at we'll start with EP. Where are we here? EP. So we'll move it over here. So we can see that the Hydrans have 28 EP. So that ties in perfectly with what we were talking about before, finding, more than 2 resources. I believe it was 26 last time. So last time we saw this in the live stream, now at 28. So continuing to grow that economy. The Hydrans are, from what we've seen so far, they are one of the strongest economies in the game. So the strategy that they are using with regards to maximum reach with their bases and exploration seems to be working very well. By contrast, we can see that the ISC has an economy of 22.5. This is very much in line with what we saw with the Feds. The Feds are at 22, so 22.5 for the ISC, and that is very much par for the course. So what we can see just based on these, we'll call them 4 factions that we can see. We've got the ISC and the Federation at the 22 mark. We've got the, from previous live stream, the Klingons were at 30.5, and now the Hydrans at 28. So we can see that there is very much a sort of a separation occurring between these 2 economies, or these different factions. So we've got the 22 centered around 22 economy, and then the ones that are sort of in a higher range. So it'll be very interesting to see, as our sample size grows, where the other factions fit in with the economy, what their economies are at, and so on. I'm very interested to see what the Tholians are at, because the player who's playing the Tholians is very well experienced at this game, and I would be very interested to see how powerful or how developed their economy is and how that ranks versus everybody else. So very interested to see that. Also, what's interesting about this is that if the Hydrans decide to attack the Tholians here, the Tholian planet, and then we move the bases out of the way, is a developing planet. So if it was conquered, it would become eventually a 2 EP planet. So it would be an extra 2 EP which would put the Hydrans at 30. And if they get this resource here, then they will become 31. So they'll be right on par with where the Klingons are, or at least what we saw with the Klingons in the last turn. So that's, as far as resources explored and discovered, they are very much par for the course. They are doing very, very well. Let's take a look at fleet cap. Let's scroll up here and take a look at the ISC while we look at fleet cap. So looking at fleet cap, this is a very interesting story. Remember what we saw before with the Federation. The Federation had a 72 fleet cap. We were talking about how potent they were. They had a very strong military and a lot of ships. The Hydrans currently have 13 ship equivalents. That's the same ship equivalent that the Federation had. Their split is a little different. They have a 22-62 split between attack factors and defense factors, and that predominantly comes from the fact that they have so many tugs. The tugs are really going to beef up the defense factor number and the fleet cap with not adding a lot of attack factors. So what we can tell based on this is that the Feds don't have a tug. The Hydrans do. The Hydrans are building lots of tugs, and the Feds aren't. But the Feds are building lots of cruisers, which bring that attack factor to the equation. Same number of ships total as far as ship equivalents. So very interesting. The ISC, by comparison, still quite competitive in this regard. They're only 13 behind when it comes to total fleet count or fleet cap difference. They have a 20-49 split. So even though they only have, in this case, 7 ship equivalents, so a difference of 6, like almost double the number of ships with the Hydran fleet, with half the number of ships, the ISC is competitive with the attack and defense factors. That shows or gives you an indication of how powerful or potent ISC ships can be. And this is the real sort of knife edge that exists between these two factions, the Hydrans and the ISC. The ISC, when they build ships, especially at this point, they are tough. They have certain ship classes which will just outperform other ship classes in other factions or races, and that'll go all the way through from Y to M to GW tech. So they are very, very potent. And now the question is, those ships will cost more. But they will bring more punch to the fight. So very interested to see how this evolves and how the relationship evolves between the Hydrans and the IC. Are they going to go to fisticuffs at some point? I feel like that's inevitable. Are they going to be a lot allied and work together? Maybe. But looking at the map the way it is right now, the ISC in the position that they're in, with the Hydrans expanding aggressively below, and of course, we can't really see what the Remans are doing because they haven't shared their map. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like going forward. In 10 turns from now, will the ISC be at war with the Hydrans trying to expand their borders? Will they be at war with the Remans doing the same? Who knows? Will they be some kind of weird coalition that's, I don't know, moving towards the center of the map or picking a fight with somebody else? We'll have to see. Things like wormholes and other sort of space geography is going to really change the calculus on how everyone's going to go in those different directions. So we'll see how that goes. But we can definitely see here, based on the distribution of ships, the ISC is pushing hard to the galactic west. They're going down this sort of highway this row that they've developed here between the YFEL, the convoy that's very obviously going to build another base at some point along here, and they're going to push. The YFEL, another YFEL here, going to probably explore along the border, and you can see there's a very concerted effort to continue to build out these, build out their bases to provide the supply and support to be able to build up a sort of a defensive wall against any potential Hydran incursion. So really interesting. So before we move on we got 2 more factions to look into. We've got the Gorn and the Klingon coming up. Let's take a quick look at the chat. So William Phillips retracted a couple messages. Interesting. But saying thanks. Remans are in the shadows. That's a theme that's going to come up again a little bit later. And there we are. So what do you guys think of what's going on here? Do you think that the ISC and the Hydrans should start a fight? Do you think they should tussle things out between them? Do you think the ISC should just, blow through that border and attack the Remans? Who knows? I mean, right now, based the way the ships are, who do you think would win? Do you think that the economy of the Hydrans wins out of the tougher ships of the ISC? We'll have to find out as we follow along on the campaign. All right, let's take a quick look over to the Gorn. So last time we checked in with the Gorn, we went up to turn 30. This is now turn 34. And the Gorn had been sort of constrained by their own success to a certain degree. They hadn't built enough exploration ships, and they weren't sort of building their bubble out. We can see right off the bat, and let's zoom in a little bit here so we can see this a little bit better. We can already see that this has changed. So right off the bat, let's just take away the ships real quick, and we can see the bases. So initially, we had the base ring, the interior base ring here, which is what they had built out by turn 30. And they had been very sort of constrained within that bubble. Now they are exploring beyond that bubble. And we can see, based on the position of the ships, that it looks like they definitely have supply 3. So you can see that based on this ship here, this WDI and WSI. So the SI is their survey ship. So first of all, they built the survey ships. That's awesome. And you can see that it's 1, 2, 3 hexes away from this base, the closest point of supply. So we know that they have supply 3. Looking at the supply menu, let's see about Gorn, and we'll set the supply to 3. And this is what they can potentially explore. So you can see that that's what they're doing. The WSI is going to explore whether they're going north or south, up to them. You can see 3rd Fleet here has moved its way down. Let's find out what's in 3rd Fleet. 3rd Fleet has another survey ship, which is excellent, and an escort. So it's moved down to the end there, and I imagine that this convoy is going to move into Charlie 11 and build another base, much like this convoy here in Alpha 10 is doing probably the same thing. So they're going to build out these bases and move in a certain direction. Interesting. We can see that their battleship, so interesting thing about the battleship is a big ship, and it has a, if you put a prime team on it, it has the same chance of exploring space as a large exploration freighter or survey ship without a prime team. So it's pretty good for exploration. So take the battleship, go explore. That's the lesson learned here. So you can see he's doing exactly that. He has prime team on the battleship with an escort, and he's moving out to be able to explore. So that's huge. You can see 2nd Fleet and Expeditionary Fleet. Let's take a look at those. Let's see here. 2nd Fleet. So 2nd Fleet has a YFES and an escort, and I bet you Exploration Fleet has something of the same. Or Expeditionary Fleet. Yes, so Expeditionary Fleet has a large exploration freighter along with an escort. So you can see here he's really maximizing the number of exploration ships that he can build. So he had a YFEL, and he's got 2 exploration cruisers to be able to help with that. He's got a YFES, and chances are there's an opportunity here to build some more YFESs and move them out. But really, really good progress here. Let's take a look at the EP. We can see here that the Gorn, there we go. The Gorn EP is now at 22.5, right on track with what we've seen. The Federation at 22, the ISC at 22.5, and now the Gorn at 22.5. There's a real cluster of players who are basically getting that level of income. It's interesting to note that the amount of space that they've explored is closely tied to the amount of income they have. So the smaller, the factions that have explored less space seem to be clustered around the same number of economic points that they're generating, i.e. 22. Whereas you look at the Hydrans have explored quite a bit more, and they're at 28. Now, what's the ROI on that as far as like what you've built? Like, for example, with the Federation, they built out those cruisers. I have a sense that they are going to continue to accelerate their level of exploration. We'll see how that goes going forward, but it's going to be big. I think the Federation are the hidden gem in this game so far, and that they are going to hockey stick their way to success, assuming they don't get tied up into some kind of big war with the Tholians. But barring a war with a neighbor, I think they are going to be the one to watch. We'll see. All right, let's look at fleet cap. So fleet cap for the Gorn. Oh, so this is great. 12 ship equivalents, right? So we looked at the Federation with 13. We looked at the ISC with 13, the Hydrans with 7, and the Gorn now with 12. So we have a lot of ships, like a very similar number of ships being built. Fleet cap here is 45, 18 attack, 45 defense. So similar split. One of the things about the Gorn as a faction is that their early ships, i.e. Y-era, aren't great. They're not terrible, but they're not great. Whereas we talked about the ISC, they have like, their ships have very potent numbers, good attack, good defense factors. So at this early stage, the Gorn get their stride later in later M and GW era. But considering that 12 ships, they've got an 18 attack, 45 defense, that is very much in line with what we saw with the ISC. The ISC had 7 ship equivalents, and they had a 20 attack. The Hydrans had 13 ship equivalents, and they had a 22 attack. So what we're seeing here is a very similar range of numbers as far as number of ships and the amount of attack and defense factors that they're generating. So really interesting to see that. So the Gorn are, bottom line, the Gorn are doing really well, and looking forward to seeing how they're going to explore. You can see here the convoys, probably going to build one in Alpha 10, then follow that up with one in Charlie 11. As they continue to explore, things are going to get really exciting. And of course, they have their own Orion pirate faction that they've discovered, and how they choose to use them. There's a lot of interesting ways that they can be used in the game. So we'll see how that maps going forward. One of the key ways you can use Orions is as a plausible deniability tool, in the sense that you can contract them and their ships to go attack your neighbor, and you can plausibly deny that you did it. That being said, there are specific missions that you can send prime teams on to be able to uncover whether or if another faction or another player contracted, let's say, the Orions to attack you. And generally speaking, if you use the Orions in that way, it's just a matter of time before your neighbors figure out you were the culprit. So, exciting stuff. All right. Last turn reveal. Here we go. We're going to go straight into the Klingons. Ba-boom. All right. Let's move me over here so that I'm going to move my head, because obviously my head's in the way. Please forgive the fact that the watermark is over my face right now. But let's zoom in and see what we can see here. Actually, I'll switch. I can switch to the other side here. One sec. There we go. Okay, so what do we see here? We can see that the Klingons are... It's the first time I'm seeing this. So we can see that there's some interesting things going on here with the Klingons. One, you can see, let's take away the ships. We can see with the base distribution, of course, we've got a very clear preference, it seems, going north. Although there's a very clear up and down north-south preference here. We can see that the Klingons are moving hard north. You can see both because of the base distribution, but also because of this planet here is a supply point. So it's providing supply out to, it looks like, supply 3, to where there was a ship here in Q38. So we can see that there's range out there, and they're continuing to explore to the north. We can also see that there is a push to the south. If we bring back the ships real quick, we can see that we're continuing to push to the south here with a large exploration freighter. And there is a convoy here. Looks like it's going to build a base and continue that push to the south. If we look to the east, you can see, ooh, T4. T4 is a Klingon tug. So it's a Y-era tug for the Klingons. So that's a cruiser hull, and that hence the 6. But it's a 1-6, as opposed to, you'll see the D4N is a Y-era diplomatic cruiser, and it's a 4 attack, 6 defense. So same kind of hull template, kind of. It's a cruiser nonetheless, and then we have the tug variant, which is the T4. So you can see the 1.6 is there. It looks like we're going to be building a base here shortly. We can see that the exploration cruiser and a number of sort of fleets are working their way to the east. We have a small exploration freighter here, small exploration freighter here, and cruiser with Prime Team in Joint Task Force Alpha continue to explore to the west. And of course, we have the exploration ship going to the north. One of the big things about the Klingons right now that you'll notice is there is a serious, whereas with the Federation, we saw a lot of ships and a lot of those cruisers, and they're really pushing out to explore with the Prime Teams. We started off that way with the Klingons, but we got derailed effectively, and we're not doing that right now. Why? There's some strategy behind that, but definitely we're at this sort of in the sort of graph of build, explore, and the different things you're investing in. We're at a point now where there needs to be a reinvestment in the kinds of ships and fleets that will help us explore. Now, we've got exploration ships, of course, but we need to start building out those cruisers with Prime Teams and so on. One of the early sort of limiting factors was the imminent discovery of Y-Tech. So building out ships in W-Tech means you have obviously these older ships once Y-Tech comes around. So what are you going to do with them? The goal was to wait until Y-Tech showed up and then start building sort of more in force. At turn 34, we've had Y-Tech for a while. We need to start building more substantial ships, Prime Teams, and things like that to be able to explore in the same way that the Federation is. That's sort of the goal. So we need to kind of move in that direction. So we'll see how that goes as we go forward. Let's take a quick look at EP. We can see here the EP hasn't changed. We're at 30.5, so very close to the Hydrans. The Hydrans are at 28. And really, if the Hydrans were to leverage all the resources they have at their disposal, we'd be below the Hydrans. The Hydrans would have a better economy than we do, but nonetheless, very close. When we go to fleet cap, we can see that despite what I just said, we can see that the Klingons have a ship equivalency of 15. So that's the largest number of ships that we've seen so far in the game. We have a split of 33 to 62, and that's close to the highest that we've seen for attack and defense factor split. Now, don't get me wrong, the Feds are ahead of that. They have, I believe it was 45 or something close to that as their attack factor. But the number of ships and the attack and defense factor split here is very good, and especially considering we don't have any neighbors. We haven't bumped into anybody just yet. Looking forward to doing that in the near future. One thing to note when we looked at the Federation and some of the other factions. In fact, let's take a quick look at the Hydran and ISC map as a point of reference. So I'm going to take away the bases and the ships just for the clarity here. So you can see this star is their home system. Let's count the hexes to the border. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hexes out, they're at the border. Let's look at the ISC. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see a difference of 5 to 6 hexes before they bump into somebody. Now, obviously, we can't see that with the Remans, but if we go back to the Fed map, we can see that, we'll zoom in a little bit here so it's a little bit easier to see. You can see that if we take away the ships and bases again, 1, 2, actually, I'll bring the bases back because we need that Tholian base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So around 5 to 6 is when we start bumping into the Tholians, or at least within the Tholian supply range. So very similar distance. Now we don't know where the rest of the Tholian bases and ships are, other than we know that there's one in Alpha 40 and Yankee 40 here and here, but very similar distance, the 5 to 6 hex range. Let's go back to the Klingons real quick here. So if we look here, couple things to note. Here's the capital system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this represents the 6 hex mark, and we can probably expect we're going to bump into somebody around this location. Now, when we go north, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've gone 9 hexes to the north total without encountering anybody. Interesting. How about to the south? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the south, and to the west, 1, 2, 3, 4. But if we go to this top sort of northwestern corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So why am I counting that out? I mean, Tony, I can do math too. I'm illustrating the fact that we have reached sort of the edge and gone beyond what other factions are at when they're encountering their neighbors. We've got some distance from the capital that is well in excess of 5 to 6 hexes. In the left to right column, we've got maybe close to the 5 to 6 that we're getting close to, and we'll most likely bump into somebody soon. But the thing that reason why I'm bringing that out is because it is very likely that we are going to bump into somebody soon, based on what we've seen with the other factions. The Feds have bumped into the Tholians. The ISC have bumped into the Hydrans and the Remans. Who else are we going to bump into? And the question is, who are they going to be? Well, we know it's probably not the Hydrans, the ISC, and the Remans, because they've bumped into each other. So could be the Hydrans in the sense that we could bump into the Hydrans at some point. But based on the distribution of that map, we kind of know where they are, and I don't think that's likely. Could it be the Gorn? Maybe. You see the Gorn and their map, they're exploring predominantly to the south, so there's a good chance that they are perhaps in the northern part of the map. Okay? When we look at the Federation and the Tholians, they could be anywhere. But based on the fact that the Tholians are underneath where the Feds are, there's a good chance that there are, if the Hydrans are on the east of the map, chances are they're on the west of the map. So using this to be able to figure out where everybody is, who have we not met? We have not met the Romulans, or at least we don't know where the Romulans are. We haven't met the Carnivons, and we have not met the Lyrans. So those are 3 factions that we haven't met yet. We have a sense of where the Tholians are, the Federation, the Gorn, the Hydrans, the ISC, and the Remans. So that's 6 plus 3 is 9, and I'm number 10. So chances are the factions that we're going to bump into are either the Carnivon, the Lyran, or the Romulan. Where are they relative to us? We'll have to see. One of the interesting things about bumping into the Romulans is, of course, they'll have cloaking technology, depending on how much they've researched that. And that could be an interesting dynamic when trying to fight them. Having played the Romulans before, if you were to engage in a war with them, it's very tricky to nail them down in decisive battles if they don't want to fight them. With the Lyrans, I've fought battles with the Lyrans before in previous games, and they're very similar to the Klingons in the sense it's a tete-a-tete fight. At this stage in the Y era, we'll have very similar ships. The Carnivons, also at Y era, will be about the same. But what's interesting is that when we hit M-Tech, there will be, in my opinion, a distinct advantage for the Carnivons because they will get some very potent ships right away. So if I'm a Carnivon player and I've looked at the list of ships and when they get introduced, I'll be investing in M-Tech or like investing in technology to be able to get M-Tech sooner because when those ships come, it's a big advantage. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But I'm very interested based on and I don't have any confirmation of this, but based on the minor factions that we've encountered, being the Carnivon and the Lyran, there is a pretty good chance, based on what we've seen so far, that I'm going to bump into, especially who's left, the Lyrans or the Carnivons. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So we've talked about the Federation and the Tholians. We've gone through the turn reveals for turn 34 with all the factions that we have. Now let's take a quick look at the Tholian story from the Hydrans. So as you saw on the map, there is I'm just pulling up the story now. So as you know, there is a faction. There we go. There is a faction, minor faction of Tholians that is right next to the Hydrans, and they've encountered them. So one of the interesting things that the Hydrans have done is they've sort of set out their their preconceived attitude when it comes to the Tholians. So this is what was shared in a thread that we have when it comes to the story here. This is what has been shared by the Hydran player. The history of the world, like letters without poetry, flowers without perfume, or thought without imagination, would be a dry matter indeed without its legends. And many of these, though scorned by proof 100 times, seem worth preserving for their own sakes. And the enduring tales of the Nexus are rooted thus. The starseed endeavor, which was cut untimely, pruned by unhappy chance, and devilry of the heresy, was such a tale. It is given to us to forbear this tale of woe, though it may hap be timely and overdue. It came from the sky, the year after all the ships left for the stars. The starseed, whose first brave souls went in search of the Nexus. We thought we could rest for a while, but the gods willed us the heresy to teach us to follow the righteous path. A fireball from heaven that exploded in the atmosphere and caused an antimatter winter that lasted 3 centuries. The message was clear. The gods had tasked us with living through hell and learning the path of the righteous to earn our place amongst the stars, and to know the heresy when we saw them again. Now we have found them. All these long years later, they must be expunged. No trace can be left. No pangs of genocide committed. No remorse. They are the heresy. The gods sent them to test our faith, and we shall rise to their call. Year 80, March 7th, Annals of the Pharaohs. So that's a little piece of the story or the narrative when it comes to the Hydrans and their relationship with the Tholians. They're talking about a ship that exploded in their atmosphere, causing an antimatter winter, and this is the founding root of the rise of the theocracy on their planet, and the motivating factor of why they are at this point indicating that they are very anti-Tholian. So what's going to happen? We saw obviously that they have a couple ships there, but are they going to go to war? Are they going to pick a fight? Are they going to take them out? It would seem to indicate, based on this narrative or this story, that would be the case. We'll have to see. Make sure you follow us and subscribe to be able to follow that journey as the Hydrans go out and destroy the Tholians. But here's a good question for you, and a question for the Tholian player, and we'll go to the chat in here in a second. What happens when the Hydran player encounters the Tholian player? Now, granted, they've encountered a non-player faction, but what happens when they encounter the actual player? Will they go to war? Will there be some kind of negotiation? I don't know. We'll see. This would seem to indicate a clear course of action, a clear path to war, but we'll see how that evolves as the story goes on. Quick trip to the chat. Let's see here. Hydran capital growth, Jim says. Oh, okay. Interesting. Another bit of spam. We'll just have to get rid of that real quick. Let's see here. These are the hockey stick references. Oh, there's the hockey stick references again, of course, because, being Canadian and all that. Bill's saying hi. Jim's talking about his jihad and death to the heresy. So in this case, we're talking about the Tholians and how he's going to beat down the Tholians. Okay. So we've talked about the Feds, the Hydrans, the ISC, the Remans, the Federation and their encounter with the Tholians. We've talked about the Hydran story with the Tholians, and now I bring to you the short but sweet State of the Empire address from the Alpha to the Klingon people. Here we are. We have seen great success in recent years. The Klingon Empire has reclaimed the stars, spreading far and wide. We have encountered the lost children of the gene cults. Misguided in their pursuits, They have demonstrated their martial prowess and their Klingon nature. Welcome back into the fold. We honor their warrior spirit. Word has come to us from our Orion partners of neighbors in the dark. Whether these are lurking predators waiting to strike, demure prey needing strong guidance and protection, or strategic partners that will aid the Empire's growth, we must prepare for all outcomes. The coming years will be a time of great change. We will seek out lost Klingon colonies and Xenos incursions, explore the vastness of the galaxy spreading our borders, and boldly face the unknown of our future for the Alpha. A little short and sweet, but nonetheless, the state of the Empire. So, from that little dialogue, that little speech, what do you take away from that? Now, we talked about before the sort of the strategy, the Klingon strategy anyway, when it comes to where we're at now and how we want to explore in the future. But what do you think? This takes into account, for example, the encounter of the Carnarvon, the Lyran factions that we have, the honor duel that occurred on that one Lyran planet, and that brought them into the fold. We have brought them in as being members of the Klingon species, our family, so to speak, even though they are misguided in their genetic pursuits. So how is that going to impact and affect our interaction with a Carnarvon or Lyran faction when we encounter them? We shall see. All right. Well, here we are. Thank you so much for staying with us for this long. I very much appreciate your time, your dedication, your being part of this community. If you haven't already, please consider giving this a thumbs up on the YouTube algorithm. It tickles it the right way and makes sure that this goes out to as many people as we can get it out to. Helps build our community, build that subscriber base, and of course, really allows us to build this community of people who want to have fun playing this kind of strategic game. If this is the thing you like, and you've joined us a couple times and you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. Again, just to be able to help our channel grow. The purpose of that is to be able to unlock features in YouTube that allow us to do more, create more content, and engage you more as a community here with us. So really, really looking forward to what's coming in 2022. So much to talk about. We talked about at the very beginning, the discussion about the goal now for the 500 and what that will unlock for us with YouTube, the discussion about Patreon, and is that something that you want to do? If so, what would you like us to do in Patreon? What would you like us to produce? How would you like to be involved? And of course, as we're going forward, we have new content that's coming out when it comes to animations and CGI, obviously the turn reveals as we come, and the evolving story as we interact in this game. So much fun. Hope you're enjoying it too. And I'm looking forward to seeing you through the rest of 2022. With that said, as I scroll over here, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.